So, Niners fans, what do you want to talk about? 2024, the regular season edition for my San Francisco 49ers, is officially here, and it began in the green as they took on the New York Jets on a Monday night to close out week one. And, well, thankfully, they got it in the green because I was already suffering enough with Monday Night Raw and Triple H ruining another good story with the Judgment Day drama and all that bullshit that happened this past Monday and the Mondays prior. But thankfully, my 49ers got the job done, closed out week one with the W, beating the New York Jets 31-19. So, prior to this game, some of the things I wanted to hope for in terms of the keys to victory for my team included, obviously, protecting Brock Purdy from constantly getting hit. I had some suspect things about that offensive line, especially when it came to the interior, other than Dominic Puni, who proved himself to be pretty good in the preseason, and glad that it carried over into at least this first game of the regular season. With the exception of Colton McKivitz, the rest of the offensive line, they held their own. They held their own in this one against a tough Jets pass rush. So they did all right protecting Brock Purdy from constantly getting hit, other than a garbage time sack in the fourth quarter. The other key to victory that I was hoping for in this game was forcing Aaron Rodgers to throw to his receivers that weren't named Garrett Wilson, which they did. And I'll expand on that in just a bit. And then looking on the New York Jets side of things for just a tad bit, the backline defense. They had to find a way to shut down Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, as well as the other guys like George Kittle and Jawan Jennings, as well as find a way to create some turnovers if they wanted to have a chance in this one. And then you wanted to protect Aaron Rodgers from injury again because, well, here you are again on a Monday night setting, just like last year. If you remember last year, revisionist history, Aaron Rodgers tore up his Achilles on that cursed MetLife field against the Buffalo Bills 4 plays into that last year. And you didn't want to have that kind of eerie feeling again. I mean, of course, I don't want to wish that on Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, you wanted to find every possible way to protect Aaron Rodgers from injury again. And thankfully, this past Monday night, he did not get injured. So hopefully it stays that way. So looking at some of the good, the bad, the ugly about this game for both of these teams, starting off with the Jets. For the Jets, unfortunately, they didn't get much protection out of protection. They did get protection, but they didn't get much production out of Aaron Rodgers. Not necessarily because it was his fault, but because his receiving game behind Garrett Wilson was non-existent. So going back to my point about the keys to victory for the New York Jets, when you look at that passing game behind Garrett Wilson, and to an extent, their running back, Breece Hall, there really isn't much behind them. Like, all you had was Allen Lazard and a less than 100% Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, who is still recovering from a torn ACL and is very injury prone. So when Garrett Wilson was pretty much like getting locked down by Niners cornerbacks, yeah, and Aaron Rodgers had to go to rely on someone else, there's basically nothing. And also considering the fact that when Breece Hall would get stuffed in the running game, when he wasn't at times productive, he had no choice but to go and throw. And then oftentimes with Aaron Rodgers in those go and throw situations, it failed. So yeah, not exactly a productive day for Aaron Rodgers. Not necessarily because of him, but because of his receiving game. That's not named Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Defensively, the Jets gave up over 400 yards of total offense. A good chunk of that came from the rushing game of the 49ers. And a good amount of that came from big plays as well. But if there is one positive from this game for the Jets, is that they did limit San Francisco's scoring chances to just field goals. So they limited half of that to Jake Moody kicking some field goals, limiting them 3 points, but the Jets couldn't necessarily counter that all that much. They couldn't counter that into their own scoring opportunities because going back to that other point, not much of a passing game to speak of. So the Jets have to get back and adjust some of these things going to the next game against the Tennessee Titans. Meanwhile, for my San Francisco 49ers, let's look back at some of these things that were good. Christian McCaffrey, he was ruled out just an hour before the game started with the calf injury that was bothering him all preseason long. But Jordan Mason, the backup running back, who I might have spoken about pretty well about prior, but I probably didn't. But Jordan Mason, he filled in very admirably in this role. He stepped up to the plate. He took on the larger role that was given to him, and he ran with it. Literally ran with it. He sliced through the inside of the Jets' running defense. He also ran outside of it. He pretty much took every chance he could, and he delivered. He delivered for San Francisco. Although he had a touchdown taken away from him midway in the second quarter thanks to penalties, but he wouldn't be denied in the third quarter, though. So he did get his touchdown, and he had himself a night. He had himself a night with Christian McCaffrey out, and Elijah Mitchell wasn't there because he had a season-ending injury already. And it makes you wonder, Jordan Mason was there for a little while. Why wasn't Jordan Mason the number 2 to Christian McCaffrey already? I don't know. Makes you wonder. And then defensively, they had themselves a good night as well. They came up with 3 key plays that prevented the Jets from really getting back into this game. Like the peanut punch fumble by Fred Warner early in the first quarter. The tip interception by Duamador Lenore, which was caught by Demetrius Flanagan Fowles early in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, when the Jets were in full desperation mode, trying to just get something going, with just 7 minutes left in the game, Aaron Rodgers had a pass broken up by corner Isaac Yiadom, the new cornerback from the Saints. So some big plays there by San Francisco to really instill confidence in their defense. Some new additions on defense and some familiar faces going into the next week. Talking about a little bit about the bad before we move on. Brandon Ayuk, he certainly didn't have himself a nice game, but it's a little to be expected when he did have all his contract shenanigans clouding the offseason. And, well, he just signed his contract extension last week or two. And he's still trying to get back into the swing of things with the team, especially with Brock Purdy. Speaking of Brock Purdy, he didn't exactly have his best game himself, regardless of what the stat line says. So, yeah, he didn't exactly have his best game. He overshot some of his throws, threw a few from behind. Yeah, he kind of negated a little bit of those with a nice couple of throws in the open field to Debo and then to George Kittle, to Juwan Jennings. But there were some throws that he could have had back. But there's still plenty of time. There's still plenty of time in the season. There's still 17, 16 games to go. Still a lot of games to get Purdy, back to good playing form. So overall, there were a lot of things that I liked about this game. A couple things I didn't like about this game, but hey, it's only week 1. It's only the first game of the season, and in the end of this game, we came away in the green with the W, 31-19. So looking ahead a little bit to week 2, the 49ers, they got a short turnaround to the second week, but they got to travel up northeast to play the Minnesota Vikings, who are coming off a big win of their own with a blowout in the Meadowlands over the New York Giants, 28-6, and they're going to be playing a familiar face that was in their place last year. Sam Darnold, he had himself a nice game in that blowout win over New York. And for the 49ers, they got to play in a place that's been a house of horrors to them for, I'd say, the last 2 times they had to go up there. US Bank Stadium, they lost those games in some pretty heartbreaking fashion. So they're going to be looking to reverse that trend in week 2. So looking forward to that game. Hopefully the Niners will go up there and get the win over Minnesota. So you can't necessarily sleep on them after they're coming off that big win. So in terms of content for that game, it's going to be a little bit earlier in terms of the preview because my schedule is going to be a little bit messy this week because I'm going to be going on a camping trip this weekend, and my like in terms of the NFL content, it's going to be either early or behind. So, yeah, it's going to get real messy this coming week. So the previews might definitely be earlier, but I'm in terms of the content, since I'm going to be behind on watching a lot of these games. Yeah, the content will probably be behind in terms of recapping nearly all the games. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the 49ers win over the New York Jets to kick off the 2024 season for my San Francisco 49ers. And yeah, let's have a conversation about it, the good, the bad, the ugly, when it comes to this win over the Jets. Let's have a conversation, a civil one at that. And on to the next one. On to the next of many in this 2024 season. Anyway, until the next one, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And this is DylanLasagna signing out. And until the next one, peace out.